Welcome to Man on a Beach, Journeys Around the Coast. The series celebrates the enhancing effect of the beach on people. In September 2011, I stepped onto a beach in Cornwall where I live, and I asked a stranger, what does the beach mean to you?
Man on a Beach is a series filmed by Ian Brighouse, which aims to celebrate the elemental power of the beach where the air, land and sea meet. Having travelled extensively across the UK coastlines, Ian asked the public one very simple question: what does the beach mean to you? In the narrative collective film, beachgoers share their perceptions and recollections, all drawn out by the enhancing effect of the beach. And it's an absolute pleasure now to be joined by Ian Brighouse to discuss this decade-long programme of Man on a Beach. So Ian, thanks so much for giving me some of your time here this morning. Before we get into the actual filming process and the outcomes of your Man on a Beach series, can you just give myself and the viewers a bit of a background to your work as a filmmaker and why the kind of concept of the relationship between people and beaches was so intriguing to you?
Well, I'd always been going to the beach. Living in Cornwall, been on the beach with friends, family, and I suddenly noticed really that everybody seemed generally happy in that environment. So I thought I'd investigate and try to find out why that was. I still haven't had the definitive answer to the question. And after the first year visiting beaches in Cornwall, I developed it nationally. So now it covers the whole of the UK. And I do seasonal revisits, but the interviews are with people that I meet on the beach. They're never arranged in advance. So I've been really fortunate with the generosity of people to be open and answer that question. And 774 different responses to the question, and it covers over 650 odd beaches. And I was your way in October, Northern Ireland, from Warren Point all the way up to McGilligan Strand. Great, rewarding series to be involved with, really. And I see my job as just collecting these eulogies rather than it being me in a sense. So I'm very dependent on the generosity of people, and that's been overtly manifested for nearly 10 years that I've been doing it. And I hope it never ends.
And is there a particular moment or interaction prior to your visit of over 600 beaches across the UK that was the sort of stimulus or the catalyst for this decade-long project?
Well, I started going to the beach when we moved to Cornwall 25 years ago, and the initial impetus for starting the series was that awareness suddenly that people seemed happier on the beach. But as I started going to a Cornish beach every day, initially, inevitably, you have misgivings as to whether it's a good idea and whether you should keep going. And I had a very vivid experience on a beach called Gwithian on the north coast of Cornwall. That's a flat beach with sea stacks, and it was a very stormy Tuesday morning. It's a flat beach with an ebb tide, and when you get an ebb tide, you can often see the sky in the beach because of the water covering. There was a storm coming across the Atlantic. The sense of the horizon and exactly where I was got sort of distorted, and I had a very cathartic, positive experience that this was a good idea, and it gave me a sort of well of confidence. It's hard to explain specifically, and that's carried me through all of the interviews over nearly 10 years now. And that was, I can remember it distinctly, it was 8:20. That had a very positive impact on me going forward, and gave me a great sort of sense of warmth.
So can you just elaborate more then on your style? You'd mentioned in your opening statement how you wouldn't arrange any interviews and you were kind of going in relying on the kindness and the willingness of strangers to be involved in the project. So what was your film technique? What kind of equipment were you using, and how did you identify a potential interviewee when out on a beach? Were people happy when you approached them with a camera in hand, they asked them a few questions on their local beach?
I can distinctly remember the trepidation when I approached the first person I ever interviewed, which was on a beach called Shinall's Creek. I call it Trellissick Gardens in Cornwall. feeling of great awkwardness and would it work, way back in September 2011. I think I just battled through the early ones, and then I had that experience, which was cathartic. It was helped by filming on a Samsung Galaxy S2, which is still my favourite one that I have ever used. I don't use it anymore. And I had that in my pocket, so I wasn't approaching anybody with recording gear. So that was how I did it. I was also struck by the warmth of people and how people were happy to be interviewed, and that gave me confidence as I went on. And I do a scene setting film as well for context and photos, and that structure of the anonymous man on a beach asking a stranger one question, which is, what does the beach mean to you? With the scene setter and the photos for context and the seasonal revisits, hasn't changed since day one. And that's still the way I do it.
Welcome back to Man on a Beach down on the waterline here at Chenalds Creek, Trellissick Gardens in Truro. It's so peaceful. Let's just have a quick spin round. And there's the beach as the tide ebbs away, about halfway back now. Hi Andy, here we are at Trellissick Gardens Beach today. What does it mean to you?
A lot of memories really. Been coming here all my life. It is actually called Chenalds Creek.
Oh, okay, right.
And yes, a lot of childhood memories.
And same really going onwards. It's somewhere that'll always be here, I suppose, isn't it? And there's that permanence with them, do you think, with these beaches?
Yes, I would say so. Obviously, it's all owned by the National Trust, or the land adjoining it is. So I don't think there's any danger of it being developed.
So we'll have a pan round and then we'll finish on that. Here we go, there's the beach. Sun's coming out. And that's what Andy and me have been looking at.
So from that one simple question then, what kind of answers did you get, and what kind of responses were you anticipating, and was there any surprises? And just from looking at the extensive catalogue on your YouTube page, you can get one answer from that simple question, what does a beach mean to you, lasting 60 seconds, and counter to that you could have someone giving a 3 to 5 minute oral testimony on just how passionately they feel about their beach. So can you just give me an overview of the different ranges and scope of responses you got from the participants?
Every time I come home I record what people have said to me in the interviews for a particular trip, and I disseminate and publish those on a menu at manonabeach.com called Findings. And there are so many and they're so disparate that I've broken it down into 6 sections. So the first one is emotional and spiritual. There's a section on friends and families. There's a sensory section. There's nature. There's work and organizations. And there are leisure activities as well. And for each of those, a wide range of answers to the question, what does the beach mean to you? For example, if I think of nature, I think of Nina up at Linklet Bay in North Ronaldsay, North Scotland region. She's a talented naturalist, and 3 wonderful eulogies there explaining how interdependent we are as people within this wonderful world and the interdependence of species within it.
I grew up on a beach in Seattle, Washington. It's a big city, but we have public parks on the beach. And there's one called Carkeek Beach that I'd go to a lot, starting when I was 8. And I'd go with my book and I'd try to identify every organism I found. And it's a rocky beach, there's a lot of organisms. From flatworms to limpets and sea stars. There's purple sea stars everywhere under the rocks, and sometimes they're orange. And I'd always go back there. It's called Pysastro-Cratius, this purple sea star. And I went back after 2 years of college, feeling kind of lost. And it's always there, you know, it's like the city changes, but the beach is just high tide and low tide and seaweed, always.
If I think about Northern Ireland, I'm thinking about Dennis at Cushenden and the sense of heritage that he talks about. People used to row over from the Kintyre Peninsula, and they'd have regattas and rowing races in the bay there, and that sense of sort of links over there to Scotland.
During my early days, I can just vaguely remember there used to be regattas here. And the sailormen from Mull of Kintyre rowed over in big boats and took part in a race along this beach and over in Cushendall Beach. They had summer regatta sports, and they also had cammon hurley matches. The local hurlers played the fellas from Scotland. It's called cammon over there. Shinty better known.
Every beach that anyone mentions to me that I visited, I always think of the person that I met there, really. And I've always felt really fortunate to have collected these eulogies to the beach. I'm just thinking now of Jill at Mill Strand in Portrush. She was off work with stress, and she was using the promenade there behind the beach as part of her therapy and walking with some friends, and talks about the therapeutic benefit of being by the beach as well. So there's a massive range of different answers.
Well, I'm very fortunate because I live in the North Coast area, and we have been surrounded, or I have been surrounded by beautiful beaches most of my life, having lived in England, in the north of England, and at one point Sheffield, which was smack bang in the middle. You really begin to further appreciate the beauty that surrounds you in the North Coast area in Northern Ireland. So to me, at the moment, I'm actually off with work-related stress. And so I've joined a group of ladies every Wednesday morning and walk from one beach in Portrush around to the other, and you can hear the sound of the waves. Today it's extremely therapeutic. The beauty around the whole of the North Coast and in this area is just something else. I've travelled quite a bit around the world, and in my opinion you can't beat the North Coast of Northern Ireland. And as a Christian, to me, it just resonates God's creation and beauty. I really appreciate what He has created and what we have in this area.
Eric, what does the beach mean to you?
Actually, everything. It takes me back to my childhood when I came here with my parents a very long time ago, and it just doesn't change. It gives me freedom in my soul, freedom of spirit, and I just enjoy being here so much.
Thank you very much. Linda, anything to add?
I just love the stillness, and I love the sound of the waves and the romancing thing of the beach with music.
Oh, you read that, do it.
Well.
Thank you both very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm moving on from the people. What kind of patterns or relationship that the beaches have for the surrounding area? In seaside towns across the north coast in Northern Ireland, the beach is integral to the local economy as well, and is also seen as a community hub. How did the beach inform the actual makeup of communities and its lasting relationship in forging, a sustainable economy as well? Just how integral were beaches to the seaside towns in the south coast of England and here in the north coast of Northern Ireland?
It's interesting you should mention the north coast. I on my trip, which was in the autumn, my most recent visit to Northern Ireland, I went from County Down up through Antrim and along the top. And the weather improved just coincidentally as I went up there. But I was really struck by what I perceived to be a very healthy tourism that was happening. I'm thinking the Open had just happened at Portrush, and the signage was still up there when I was there. And that tourism is also informed, obviously that's a links golf course, but it's informed by the beach to a certain extent. But the long stretch of McGilligan Strand, I was just at the downhill end of it, but it goes all the way, as you know, right the way over to Benone as well. It's a magnet, isn't it, for tourism? And you could see in Coleraine when I was driving there, you could see at Port Stewart, another golf course. You could see the way that the beach informs a lot of the tourism and the leisure activities on that part of Northern Ireland. When I visited the Ards Peninsula, it was a very strong heritage message that I was getting there. I mentioned the regatta and people rowing over from Kintyre Peninsula. So there was quite a strong Ulster Scots traditional message there. Down at Warren Point, it was the same thing down in County Down as well. Sense of pride in the place as well. Beautiful mountains of Mourne. I remember being on Newcastle promenade at Newcastle Beach, and even though it was raining, it was still misty and gorgeous and very atmospheric. So Northern Ireland is struck me as a place of exceptional beauty. I'm thinking of the glens running down to Antrim there at Carnlough as well when I was interviewing Marnie, and looking to my left from the beach and seeing the beauty and the greenery of the glens as it ran down. Island McGee as well up at the top there, Browns Bay. Biggest dog I've ever seen on a beach was there with its owner being interviewed as well. So such a varied and beautiful place. Yeah. Wonderfully friendly people as well, and no sense of anxiety as to whether I'm going to get an interview or not.
One thing I think it's worth knowing about beaches is that they're free. They're a free source of entertainment, a free source of exercise, mental therapy as well. Is that something that came across from the data and the responses? Is that the beaches, given any individual's colour, creed or class, that the beach was a place, a safe hub where they could go without having to pay an entry fee or having to pay for the pleasure of enjoying all the benefits that beaches have to offer? Did that come across in audiences and interviews' responses?
Absolutely, you put your finger on it there. I've wondered throughout the time I've been doing this, why are people so friendly, happy, at ease and stimulated in so many different ways? And that's as near as a reason I can find, really. I think people feel there isn't any sense of ownership on a beach. And without being too philosophical about it, that does liberate and free people. So you don't get this idea of this is my place, that's your place, this is what I am, this is what I stand for. It's a sense of communion and meeting people, joining people. I've often seen people staring out to the horizon. I've said to them, what are you looking at? And they say, I don't know. I'm just happy. And it's just wonderful. I feel at ease here. I feel that all of these beaches are somewhere where I can meet people and I can be settled and I can be stimulated and I can forget and escape anxieties, problems that I might have. I'm always loath to sort of labour the therapeutic side of it, which is inevitably there. because there's always seems to be an underlying lightness to people on the beach, and it's really struck me how it's alleviating of any heaviness that's in people's souls. And that's really, I suppose, as near to a definitive answer as I've come. The idea that it takes people out of their anxieties. So it is, of course, therapeutic, but it's in a nice, light-hearted way.
And is there lessons to be learned about how local communities or indeed tourists treat and respect beaches and communal spaces, given the safety measures put in place during lockdown, and there was a couple of high-profile cases during the good weather in the south coast of England where social distancing was not respected? A lot of people might have a newfound appreciation for their own local beaches and may indeed try to holiday at home, but what lessons can we learn about how the public flock to beaches during lockdown, and moving forward as well as lockdown restrictions begin to ease, unfortunately with the summer beginning to round off to a close? But what lessons can we learn in the future about how the public should respect the spaces that beaches have to offer?
We do need to respect all our wild spaces, and of course the beach is preeminent amongst that. The site and these eulogies that I've collected is considered, or has been considered, and I've been invited to be on panels and so on, as a passive campaigner in favour of the pristine beauty of the beach. I did an interview with the director of the John Muir Trust, which is a great conservation group in Scotland, on a beach called Earlshawmore up in Sutherland in the northwest of Scotland. That's certainly worth having a look at. That's Don at Earlshawmore. Met lots of wonderful campaigners on my travels, but the eulogies that I've collected, I think, speak volumes for people's appreciation of the beach and its natural beauty. So a lot of people do go for peace and quiet, so the social distancing would be fine in that context. I can understand why people flocked to Bournemouth Beach and flocked to Durdledore in Dorset. Both of those beaches. Bournemouth Beach is actually about 7 beaches all in a row, and they're all individually covered on Man on the Beach. Durdledore as well, with Lulworth Cove next to it, very beautiful places. But I think their proximity to our major urban conurbation in London attracted people to fly down there. And it's really distressing to see all the litter and the rubbish that was left, but I think there was an enormous pent-up frustration that drove people to the coast. And I hope that people will be respectful going forward and take your rubbish home, enjoy the natural beauty and all of the wonderful therapeutic, holistic and environmental benefits of being where the air, land and sea meet. If you want to plan any trips, you can see manonabeach.com and dive into the maps there.
And just how integral are our beaches to local marine life and ecosystems and sustainability for not just the beaches themselves, but for the surrounding community and surrounding area? And how do those aspects of marine life, local economies, and local spaces for community, how does that kind of tie in and comment on our relationship and dependency on our beaches and coastlines here in Northern Ireland and across the UK?
You know, again, universally, it's a flashpoint, isn't it? It's, as well as being where the air, land and sea meet. I'm thinking of coastal erosion along the south coast of England, the almost apocalyptic tidal surge in North Norfolk a few years ago that nearly broke into the fens. Different councils and different parts of the country have a different approach to the coastline and the natural global warming that's happening in the rise in sea levels. So I'm thinking at the moment of Dorset and Hampshire. Hampshire have a managed retreat approach, and on the border, Dorset are throwing rocks into the sea to try to hold the sea back. Of course, the sea just goes round the back. In terms of beneficial eco initiatives, I'm thinking of salt marshes, thinking of Selseybill in West Sussex, which has the Environment Agency's creating a wonderful salt marsh there. Often get nature reserves. I'm thinking of Pagham, again in Sussex, nature reserves by the beach. So Murlock, I think, is a nature reserve as well, isn't it, down in County Down at the bottom there. And as a flashpoint, it's particularly important that we are considerate and respect the natural rhythms of life and the fact that the tide comes in and goes out and we adapt with it.
Of all the beaches that you've covered across the UK here and in Northern Ireland, did you have a favourite? And can you maybe expand on it? If I could ask you to choose one from England and one from here in Northern Ireland, what would be your favourite beach and why?
Well, the beach I mentioned earlier in North Cornwall, Gwithian Beach, it's I suppose more of a locals beach really. It's next to a very glamorous beach called Godrevy with its lighthouse. There's a wonderful strand of beaches right round from Godrevy to St Ives on the northwest of Cornwall. That experience, that warmth I experienced, and that sense of confidence to go on with the series, which happened at Gwithian Beach, makes Gwithian in England or on the mainland, so to speak, probably my favourite beach. When I think of Northern Ireland, or in fact any of the regions that I've visited, I always think of the people that I've met and what they've said to me. So in terms of beauty, there are gorgeous beaches, as I mentioned earlier, but I was particularly struck by Jill and her openness at Mill Strand. I think it's also known as West Beach, isn't it, at Portrush? And so I suppose that would have to be my favourite, really. I had a wonderful chat with her on the promenade up on the north coast there.
And Ian, just before I will wrap things up, is there any beaches that you've yet to travel to or cover as part of the Man on the Beach project?
There's always another beach. Everywhere I go to, before I visit the area for the first time, I do my research, as anyone would, and I come up with 20 or 30 beaches. But people will say, oh, you must go and visit this beach, or I'll notice a beach on the way. So there's always another beach, I'm relieved to be able to say. It was interesting hearing you refer to it as an extended holiday. It's become so much more. It's always been enjoyable in that sense, but it's definitely vocational now. And I feel I'm wrapped up in it. I'll never finish, because I calculated that if I visit each of the 662 beaches 4 times, I'll be somewhere in my 90s when I finish, but I'll always be adding beaches. So I'm really pleased to say I'll never finish, and this will go on forever. And it's now part of me, part of my life, and something which I think I'm really fortunate to be involved with.
Well, Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about this wonderful project, and we wish you all the best in trying to cover all those beaches, hopefully before your 90th birthday. And thanks again for sharing your story and your experience with us. And hopefully our viewers can find their next staycation through your archives on your website and your YouTube channel. So thanks again for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's all at manonabeach.com. It's been wonderful chatting to you, food for thought, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to explain a bit about this ongoing series.